Hey TV fans, Bored now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 6. The episode is called The Price. It's the Joel flashback episode. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always. And because of how short this second season is, this is the penultimate episode, believe it or not. It has flown by too fast really. But this episode has been getting a lot of praise, a lot of hype throughout the week, and it is a really great episode. It's very emotionally satisfying. There's some great character drama between Ellie and Joel, and flashbacks are a funny thing, which I'm not always a big fan of. And this episode does a good job of justifying why we needed a flashback. I mean, I think the fans always wanted a bit more of Joel anyway. Like, it was such a massive loss for the show when he was killed off. But this makes good use of the flashback. It connects some of the things we've seen in the season so far. It fills in the blanks about why there was tension between Joel and Ellie and why they weren't talking. And it definitely connects a bunch of other things to do with Joel and his past and his impact on Ellie as like a father figure, and then her moving forward in the story also. So it does a really nice job. There's some strong direction and it's a very good episode. A lot of people are saying it's the best of the season. And it definitely is a great one. There's other episodes I've really liked, which I think would challenge it, but it's a real big one, a very emotional one. So to get into it, one thing I really like about the episode is its focus structure, how it jumps forward a year at a time, and it's always on Ellie's birthday, so you see her go from 15 to 18, which, like in a young girl's life, is a big sort of jump up and development. And that's another thing about this episode, is even though it's in some ways a Joel centric episode, it's probably a bigger character one for Ellie, because I think we do see her develop a lot in those sort of few years, and it definitely, as I said, does a good job of filling in some of the blanks and some of the stuff which was kind of left open and missing in between seasons, if you like. But we see Ellie develop a lot over those few years. We see her develop a moral compass, which I think is very important for her now, and her in the story and also moving forward. Probably one thing is that it does rush through quite a lot of stuff in one episode, so that might be one like small little nitpick, because it is going over quite a lot of time. But as I said, the structure of it jumping a year at a time and getting a little bit more of Ellie at a different stage on her birthday was very nicely done, and it was a structure that worked very well for the episode. Just talking about the opening of the episode, which was also very interesting, because we get a flashback of Joel when he was basically a teenager, so similar to Ellie. I don't think that's similar age to Ellie, so I don't think that's any mistake. And we get him and Tommy, and we see their father, who's played by a really good actor, Tony Dalton, who was in Better Call Saul, played, well, quote unquote, a villain in the later seasons, was very menacing. He's a very good actor, so I was happy to see him. And we find out he's a cop, which is kind of perfect, because it means he's like this authority figure, and that almost puts this extra pressure on Joel as like the older brother, because that's something the father uses in the scene as well. He says to Joel if you weren't my two sons, you would have been in like juvie for a long time ago. So there's almost that psychological pressure that's put on them by the father, especially Joel being the oldest. But what the scene amounts to is that Joel is taking responsibility for like an incident which Tommy got caught up in with like these drug gangs, and he like beat them up, and Joel is going to take responsibility because we find out then the father sometimes beats them, and Joel's like, if he finds out he'll beat you, so I'll take the responsibility, just go off to bed. And that's what he does, and you can see that the father's a bit suspicious, and he's probably cottoned on to Joel covering for Tommy. And he has a beer with Joel and sits him down. And it turns out he doesn't do anything like physical in the scene, but he tells him this story about how he was beaten by his parents in the past, which doesn't justify his actions, of course, but he's making the point that compared to his father, he's done a little bit better. And he says to Joel, now let's see if you can do a bit better than me. I think you can. And that's something which is a nice through line in the episode, because again we see this extra pressure on Joel. We're seeing this burden on him, which has been a burden for a very long time. So it's this idea of history weighing down on him. But that also comes up later on with Ellie. It's like Joel's father did a little bit better than his father, or so he tells Joel. Joel then has done probably better than his father. And then as the father figure in Ellie's life, it's expressed in the episode later on that hopefully you'll do a little better than me. So that's a very nice thematic like through line that ripples through the generations almost. So we then jump to the 15th birthday for Ellie, which is not long after they've arrived at the compound, Tommy's compound. And we see Seth in another like little funny scene, because he works at he's like a chef, and we see that Joel is going to supply him with stuff, but Joel also wants him to bake a cake for Ellie's birthday so he can surprise Ellie. And there's a nice little comedy moment, because he on the cake it says Eli, not Ellie. So that's really funny. And Joel's furious, and Ellie doesn't mind. It's the thought that counts. She's happy with the surprise. But just like nice little comedy moments sprinkled in like that, I think helps in this. So yeah, that's pretty much that birthday. And we also find out that Ellie is pushing to go on patrol for the first time, and actually wants to go on patrol. And I think the high point of Joel and Ellie in this episode, certainly from Joel making her happy, is the 16th birthday, where he takes her out on horseback. That they go into like the forest area, and he surprises her because he takes her to this site where he's recreated there's like this aircraft which has crashed all these years ago, and he's recreated the conditions of like the Apollo 11 mission, and he actually puts her in like a space helmet, or gives her the space helmet, and she gets to sit in the seat, and it's really special. They share like an emotional moment. It's a beautiful moment. It's very well captured where he gives her the headphones, and she actually gets to hear the communication, the message between like the tower in Houston and the astronauts from that flight. And you just get inside Ellie's head, and the immersion of the moment is very well done. I've heard it's a great moment in the game as well. Another thing I like about this and what it says about Ellie is it does show her as a bit more of like this nerdy, ambitious like character who's into like science and maybe has these aspirations to go to the moon one day or to be an astronaut. And that's one of the beautiful things that this show has done well, where it's showing how when you are in like this post-apocalyptic world, then it does make you dream more. You have these bigger dreams and you have these ambitions, or your mind wanders to these things of what you would do if the world was very different and you had these opportunities. But it's always great to see like this young girl having these ambitions and maybe wanting to be a bit more of a nerd and into science thing. Like I guess in some ways it's not that uncommon now. There's definitely more girls doing it, but it's a good character beat for Ellie, and the way Joel looks at her and says, "So did I do good?" And Ellie's like, "Yep, you did." And the way her face lights up and it's beaming, and his reaction as well, just how happy he is in the moment. And that's what I mean about it almost being the peak for them two, and maybe the happiest he's ever made her. It's just such a beautiful moment that they share. We jump forward to another year, to Ellie's 17th birthday, and as Joel is looking to surprise her again, he walks in on her with a girl, and they're kissing, and this is how he discovers that she's a lesbian. She's interested in girls, and it's a whole shock to Joel. Like, it's this snapshot of him seeing Ellie grow up really fast in front of his eyes, because she's also smoking pot. She's also got herself a tattoo, and he just freaks out. Like, he's all frantic and mad and basically scares the girl away. Now, I think the girl might be Dina. We don't get her name, but it comes up that she's 19, and that's part of also Joel being pissed because there's this age difference between them. Not that it matters too much, but he points out, yeah, hey, she's 17. And I don't know for sure it's Dina. It could just be another girl, but I thought maybe it could have been a younger Dina, because if she was 19, we know that Dina is older than Ellie. But let us know in the comments if you know anything different. But it's an interesting moment because Joel does come off as a little bit of a bigot in the scene, because he starts talking about, you're just experimenting, this is just a phase, that kind of thing. And it is the sort of talk which someone who was a little bit caught in the past when it comes to like lesbian gay relationships, it's sort of thing they might say in this idea of, well, we can change them. And the way he's talking, but when I think about the scene, is because later on he learns from that reaction, but it reminds me a little bit of the reaction of Buffy in Buffy, but her reaction when she finds out that Willow is gay or lesbian, and it's a similar sort of reaction. I mean, it's less aggressive than him. It's less gung-ho, so it is a different reaction in that way. But how she is caught off guard by it, and it does take her a few minutes to adjust. So I'm not necessarily going to jump on. I mean, maybe it's just a sign Joel hasn't come across this very much in his upbringing. But I'm not going to jump on, oh, hey, he's a bigot, because he does learn very quickly and moves away from the way he's feeling. And later on, he does encourage her to saying Dina would be very lucky to have you when that comes up. Because they also talk about Jesse, about, hey, are you into him? Which Ellie sort of shoos away, no, we're just friends. because at that point they've been spending a lot of time. So I think it's that almost. It's more maybe a naivety from Joel than he hasn't been exposed to a lot of this, and his reaction is definitely bad, and it's something which is the start of pushing Ellie away, and Ellie maybe not wanting so much to do with him. She says, okay, I'm going to live in the basement because there's like a spare room. And later on, Joel offers an olive branch on that because he agrees that if you're going to live down here, I want it to be safe. I want you to be comfortable. So he does set up a bunch of things for her. So that is him reaching out to her. But yeah, in the moment, he does come off pretty old-fashioned and not too understanding. And there's also a nice little scene with Catherine O'Hara's character with Gail, where he goes to her and she's reading a book, and she's in the cafe, and once again she's always put out to be like disturbed, and just her deadpan sharp reactions are very funny in this scene, because he starts asking her about dreams, because Ellie says the drawings she's been doing have come from her dreams, and these drawings could become important perhaps in the story later on. But he starts asking about dreams, and do doctors look into dreams? And she says, yeah, the crazy ones or something, or the sad ones, something like that. It's a little bit demeaning anyway. But he presses her and starts asking her about the meaning, so because different animals and like insects, and so because I think it's like moths or something. What does moth means? Because Ellie's done drawings of moths, and she's just like very deadpan, deaf, which is really funny. But that's a fun little scene, and at least it shows Joel is making an effort and is taking an interest. So anyway, we then jump forward to Ellie's 18th birthday, where things are still a bit edgy between them, but they have made up to a certain extent. And they go out on Ellie's first patrol in the forest together, and they come across Eugene. And Eugene, who we know is Gail's husband, or I figured he was probably her husband when he came up earlier in the season, is played by Joey Pants. Joey Pantalental. And see, that's why he's called Joey Pants, short, because it's hard to say his name. But yeah, another very nice guest star, and we see him in quite a different role here. They stumble upon him, and it soon becomes clear he has been infected. So they've got a decision to make, and Joel is ready to just shoot him because he's in that mindset of, we've got to shoot him as soon as possible. We can't take any risks. But Ellie examines Eugene and gets him to count to 10, and it's obviously a method which she has developed, and it's a way to determine how far along they are, how long they've been infected, because Eugene is begging to be taken back to the village so he can say goodbye to Gail properly, something which Joel is against. But Eddie, after he counts to 10, says no, he's okay for a while. We've got enough time to take him back to the village so he could say the goodbyes. So at first it appears as though Joel is going to accept this, but it's no surprise knowing Joel, then he's just not going to take the chance. So he sends Ellie off to go and get the horse, and then he leads Eugene to the water, and it becomes clear he's going to shoot him anyway. He doesn't want to take a chance. So Eugene realizes what he's going to do, and he starts begging, and there's this whole dialogue between them where Joel is saying, sorry, but I've got to do this. He's offering to give Gail a message from Eugene, like your last words. And there's this whole thing about, and it's a very strong performance from Joey Pants, but he's pleading with Joel that he needs it. You know, it's not just about Gail. Then he needs to give her his last words himself. It's that idea of it's got to come from me, make it more personal, and yeah, it's really conflicting. But Joel, who you can see is getting emotional himself, but it's very much, this is the way to do things. We can't take a chance. And I really like the line from Joel at one point where because Eugene is saying, I need to visualize her, I need to see her. And Joel has this line about, well, if you really love someone, you would be able to see them. And I think that is a reference to Sarah, maybe, how Sarah is always with Joel and he can always see her. It could even be a reference to Tess, who he was seeing and lost in the first season, but possibly to Sarah. And that's quite a profound line. And there's a really nice choice of direction at this point. And it's something, again, I like about the episode, how it does take some more subtle choices when it comes to the direction. Because at this point, the point where it basically looks like he's going to shoot Eugene, we cut away to the river and everything goes silent. So the choice to go silent is very nicely done. And then we cut to Ellie coming back with the horse and Joel basically saying sorry, he had no choice. And then they have to take Eugene back to the village and they've got to confront Gail. And Ellie just says nothing, but you can see that she's very upset about being lied to. So they go back to the village, and at first Joel gives Gail this story about Eugene was very brave. He did it himself, so claiming he shot himself, doing the right thing almost. And I suspected this wasn't true at the time, but I think that is one reason why it cut away and you don't actually see Joel do it, because I think it's meant to be, they're going to leave that open, and then that's what this scene is to do. And it probably does put a little bit of doubt in your mind that maybe Eugene might have decided to do it himself. But Ellie cuts in and says, no, that's a lie. Joel told me he was going to do this, and then he took him to the river and shot him himself. And Gail, who's obviously very emotional at this point, then is just mad with Joel and says, no, stay away from me, get away from me. And Ellie is pretty much the same. She's mad that he lied to her. And this is a very interesting moment, because no matter where you stand on what Joel did, and there's definitely arguments for both sides. There's arguments that from his point of view he had to do it, he couldn't take the chance. But there's also an argument that, okay, Ellie had said there's enough time to do it. Things might have got out of hand. You're always taking a chance, but Ellie seems to know what she's talking about and did conduct an experiment. And there's also just the basic argument that Joel did promise her and then lied. But I think what this scene is also showing is that him telling this lie to Gail, it's something which adults learn to do, rightly or wrong. And it's this idea of sometimes there is a purpose to lying, there is a value, because you spare people the more harsher truth. Or at least it's a way to make Eugene seem heroic in death by saying that he decided to do it himself, so he went out on his own terms. It's maybe a little bit easier to digest from Gail's point of view. So I think it's partly on this idea that as adults sometimes you have to lie, or sometimes there's value to lying. And it's something which Ellie probably hasn't learned yet. She doesn't understand from this. She's still in quite a naive place when it comes to this stuff. And again, that's not necessarily saying what Joel did was right, but it's another way to look at it. And that's why Ellie then has this reaction. And it's also important because I think it then motivates her to confront Joel about what happened back at the end of season 1 in the hospital, because she suspected for a while then he lied to her. And it's later on that night, I think, she confronts him about it, and she puts it very bluntly that if you don't tell me the truth now, we're through. And it's a big shot to the heart for Joel. And she starts asking him questions. And this is just a really well directed scene, and the flow of the scene, how natural it is, and the reactions back and forth between the two of them, and Pedro Pascal really, the slow emotional breakdown of Joel is really great, really powerful. But he says to Ellie there were no more in the hospital who were immune. He says a couple of other things, but he is honest about, because she's starting to put this stuff together about how logically, how did he get her out of there? There seems to be an inconsistency. And that's another nice little small scene in the episode earlier when I think it's right before he takes her out on the patrol. She's talking to herself and preparing to ask him this stuff. So that's actually a nice small scene. But yeah, then it comes to this, and he's honest that he killed the doctor and he killed all those people, and that the doctor could have come up with a cure. They could have used Ellie for a cure. And Joel's like, but you would have died. And Ellie's like, well, that's my fate then. That's my role. And you had no right to make that decision. It was meant to be, is the way she puts it. So we're seeing Ellie develop almost this moral compass where she would be willing to die if it meant they could have found a cure and they could have saved all those lives. And he also admits to killing Marlene, and just the tension and the emotion in the scene is so beautiful, and it's very murky, it's very complex. In some ways there's no right or wrong in it, even though again it's getting into what Joel did, and it all was very murky, and you can definitely argue that it was wrong, but it came from a very true place. It came from a place of he had grown very attached to Ellie, and I think there was a morality on that. Then he was doing it to save her, and he was doing it because he felt it wasn't right for her to be used in that way, for her to be killed off. So there's a whole side to it, because at one point he says, if I had it to do, I would do again. And that's when she comes out with a very blunt, strong line about, well, that's because you're selfish. And it's kind of, he says, no, because I loved you, I think. And again, it comes back to that thing of, if you did love someone that much, you would do that for them. You would do pretty much anything. And as we've said, in many ways, she has become almost like his new daughter, pretty much, in place of Sarah, and that's partly why she means so much to him. And later on, Ellie, before they depart, she does leave a bit of a door open for their relationship, because she says, I'm not sure I can ever forgive you for this, but I'm gonna try. And we do hear these lines which make Ellie sound almost mature, ahead of her years, but I think in some ways she appreciates it, and he was finally honest with her, but she's very upset. And it's almost a double whammy. She's very upset over what he did with Eugene, but she's also upset over this. But it's a crucial line, like, I'm willing to try. So that's, I think in some ways makes it even more tragic what happened to him later on. And this in many ways is their last big meeting. Obviously you had that one on the porch as well. We get a little bit more of that. This is also after the New Year's Eve thing, because we sort of jump forward 6 months from after the Eugene incident, and we get to see Joel's end of it, the stuff with Seth at the dance when he is acting very much like a bigot towards her and Dina. And I guess the purpose of that, like, at the time I thought maybe that was a little bit wasted, because we've already seen that scene, so do we need to see it from Joel's point of view? But probably the purpose is this idea of he's been a little bit not as extreme as Seth, but acting a little bit like that, like Seth is in that scene earlier in the episode. So it's probably just this idea of now he's seeing it through his eyes and the way Seth is acting. So it's almost a lesson for him, but there's certainly not much wasted in the episode. I think it's all very well used. And then after the emotional scene between Joel and Ellie, we jump forward to the present and we see Ellie on her own, and it's her now heading into battle, heading towards Abby, and we see the full picture, the context. So it's all very well done. Very good stuff, very good episode, and a great use of flashbacks, as I said. So that's The Last of Us, The Price. So one more episode now for the season. Will be very interesting to see where they leave it off for the season. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and I will be back with the season's finale soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.